G'day guys, welcome to this video series where we're going to break down everything that you need to know to master each and every detachment in the Chaos Space Marine Codex. We're going to break down the detachment rules in detail, go through what they do, and give each one a rating of 0 to 10. We're going to break down every enhancement available to each detachment. We're going to talk about which ones are worth the points, which ones you're going to want to leave behind, and we're going to give each of them a rating of 0 to 3. We're then going to break down all of the stratagems, some of the amazing power, which ones are worth the command points and which ones are not, and we're going to give each one of those stratagems a rating of 0 to 3 as well. We're then going to talk about which data sheets pair best with the stratagems, enhancements, and detachment abilities to create some truly brutal combos on the tabletop, and we're going to give them a further rating of 0 to 10. Once that's done, we're going to have an overall power rating for the detachment of 0 to 50 based on the above points. This is going to give you a real indication of how powerful this detachment is. Then we're going to include an example list that includes all of the powerful combos that we've talked about earlier. We're going to give some practical examples of how to deploy that list and how to engage with the terrain and your opponent in various mission formats. And finally, we're going to place that detachment on the detachment leaderboard. We're going to give it a tier rating and we're going to place it in contrast to the other detachments to help you decide which detachment you want to field when you're running your Chaos Space Marines. So with that being said, let's get stuck into the video.
Look for the Blood God.
Alrighty guys, let's talk about the Dread Talons. These guys are inspired by your Night Lords, and these are your terror-inflicting, evil, scary Chaos Space Marines. So if you like the fear element of Chaos Space Marines, this is definitely the detachment for you. Let's have a look at the detachment rules here. So we've got Terror Descends, which is an aura. In the battle shock step of your opponent's command phase, if an enemy unit that is below starting strength is within 12 inches of one or more Heretic Astartes units from your army, that enemy unit must take a battle shock test. Each time an enemy unit is within 12 inches of one or more Heretic Astartes units from your army, takes a battle shock test, subtract 1 from the result. Enemy units affected by this detachment rule do not need to take any other battle shock tests in the same phase. Okay, so the idea here is basically as long as your opponent has taken some damage, if they're within 12 inches of you, they're going to have to take a battle shock test. And then they're going to basically get -1 to that result as well, being by virtue of being within 12 inches of you. There's some really interesting plays you can do here by putting raptors within range as well to apply further -1. Overall, I'm not a huge fan of the battle shock style mechanics in this game. I find that most units have pretty reliable leadership and are able to pass their battle shock tests quite easily. Your opponent is also going to have a stratagem that they can use to pass it if they need to. And also the fact that you have to have done some damage to them means that you're going to have to spend a turn putting small amounts of chip damage on multiple units, which is generally speaking not what you want to do. Generally the way that you want to play this game is you want to pick one target and kill it, and then next turn pick another target, kill it, then next turn pick another target and kill it. Whereas the problem with this is it sort of incentivizes you to spread your damage thin, which in order to try to maximize the amount of battle shock tests your opponent has to take. But that's typically not the way that you want to play this game. So I think it's opportunistic at best, and unfortunately this I think is one of the worst detachment rules that we have, so I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 10. Alright, let's have a look at the enhancements, because there's some pretty interesting enhancements in here. So we've got Night Shroud, 10 points, Chaos Lord model only. Models in the Bearer's unit have stealth ability, so this is pretty good. Being able to get stealth on units to make them -1 to hit is always, a welcome ability. And being 20 points, I think that's pretty good on big unit of Chosen or something like that. So I'm going to give that one a 2 out of 3. Willbreaker, Heretic Astartes model only. In the fight phase, after the bearer has made its attack, select one enemy unit hit by one or more of those attacks, and that unit must take a battle shock test. Now, unfortunately, inflicting battle shock tests on your opponent in the fight phase is the worst time to do it, because generally speaking, you're about to tick over into the command phase and they're going to recover from that battle shock almost immediately. There are some interesting stratagems that bounce off of battle shock, and there's also some stuff like if you charge something, inflict a battle shock test on it, then it can't interrupt into the other thing that you charge. So say you got like a big unit of Terminators and you charge 2 units into it, because it's going to take 2 units to kill it. If you don't battle shock it, you're going to fight with the first unit, then they can spend a stratagem to interrupt the combat sequence and kill the other unit before it strikes. Whereas if you inflict battle shock with them on this first unit, then they can't use stratagems on that unit, and therefore they can't interrupt. So there's some niche cases where this is really good, but generally speaking, I'm not a huge fan of inflicting battle shock in the fight phase. So that's going to get 1 out of 3 from me. We got warp-fueled thrusters. It's 10 points, jump pack Chaos Lord model only. And at the end of your opponent's turn, if the bearer's unit is not within engagement range of one or more enemy units, you can remove the bearer's unit from the battlefield and place it into strategic reserves. This one is really, really good. I like this a lot. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 3 because the ability to pick up a unit is really good. I kind of like this on a Lord running around on his own because then he kind of operates in the similar style as an assassin, where you can basically jump out, kill something, hide easily. Then you can pick him up at the end of your turn and then drop him somewhere else, and then he goes in and does all this really interesting stuff. So I'm quite a big fan of the warp fuel thrusters. And then last we have Eater of Dread, 15 points. Heretic Externals model only. At the start of your command phase, if the bearer is on the battlefield, roll 1d6, adding 1 to the result for each battle-shocked enemy unit that's on the battlefield, and on a 5+, you gain a CP. So this one isn't really good. Anything that's going to generate you CP by virtue of command points being really powerful is good, but chances are you're probably only going to have 1 or 2 maybe things on the battlefield, and that means you're only going to be re-rolling. You're only going to be generating command points sometimes. So it's not something I'd go nuts about. It's not something I would try too hard to get in the list. However, if you do have a character and you do have 15 points floating around, then there's nothing wrong with adding this one on there. So I'm going to give it a 1 out of 3 just based on the fact that, it's not really that impressive. All right, now let's talk about stratagems. There's some pretty wild stratagems in here, so let's get stuck right into them. The first one, Depthless Cruelty. 1 CP, Battle Tactics, so you could use this for free if you have a Chaos Lord. 1 Heretic Studies infantry unit from your army that's not been selected fight yet this phase. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes an attack that targets a unit that is battle shocked or below half strength, improve the armor penetration characteristic by 1. So 1 CP for +1 AP is amazing. The problem is your opponent has to be below half strength or they have to be battle shocked. So this is one of those stratagems I was talking about that pairs with the enhancement, where you go, cool, I charge you with the enhancement, I battle shock you, and now when I fight you with my other unit, I can spend a CP to get +1 AP. It's great. Unfortunately, there's too many hurdles to jump through as far as I'm concerned. Pushing your opponent down to below half strength or inflicting a battle shock step, it's just a little bit too tricky to pull off and too situational. If those things do happen, it's amazing, but if they don't, it's not really that good. That being said, I'm going to give it a 1 out of 3. Bloody Example, 1 CP, so it's an epic deed. In the fight phase, just after a Heretic starts unit destroys a character unit, each enemy unit within 12 inches and visible to your unit must take a battle shock test. So basically you go in, you charge something, you kill it. If it's a character that you've killed, you can then, force an aura of battle shock tests. Again, this is one of those things where if your opponent has high leadership and they pass their battle shock tests, it's not really that impressive. So 1 out of 3. Pitiless Hunters. So we've got 1 CP, it's a battle tactic, so you could get it for free. In your shooting phase, 1 Heretic Studies infantry unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot this phase. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes an attack that targets a unit that's battle shocked or below half strength, you can reroll the hit roll and you can reroll the wound roll. So this is pretty wild in the fact that rerolling hits and wounds is a lot. That's a lot of damage that you're going to be getting. However, once again, it requires battle shocks, and there's no super reliable way to deliver those battle shock tests. I think this one's one of the better stratagems because, generally speaking, at least one unit of your opponents is going to be battle shocked. It may not be the one that you really want to target, but it does mean that whatever does target them for 1 CP is going to be doing some serious damage there. So I like this one. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 3. We got Relentless Terror, 1 CP. In your movement phase, just after Heretic Astartes infantry unit from your army falls back until the end of your turn, it is eligible to declare a charge in a turn in which it fell back. So this is really good. 1 CP, fall back and charge. It's not tethered to any morale shenanigans, and being able to fall back and charge is a really effective way of getting on objectives and things like that. One of the things that your opponent's often going to try to do to prevent you from, say, charging the cultists that are on their backfield is they're going to tag you in their turn, so that in your turn, you can't fall back and charge, so therefore you can't really dig deep into their lines. Whereas this stratagem is going to allow you to do that, which is really, really fantastic. I'm going to give this one a 2 out of 3 as well. Then we've got Screaming Descent. So it's a strategic ploy, it's 1 CP. In the reinforcement step of your movement phase, from the second battle round onwards, 1 Heretic Astartes jump pack unit from your army that is in reserves. Set up your unit anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 3 inches horizontally away from enemy units, but until the end of the turn, you're not eligible to declare a charge in the turn. And then select 1 enemy infantry or mounted unit within 6 inches and visible, and that unit must take a battle shock test. This one is fantastic. 3-inch deep strike. You can't charge afterwards, which is a bit disappointing, but you're basically going to be able to use this on your raptors to basically drop in, force a battle shock test, force that -1 to their leadership test. So it really activates a few of the other abilities in this detachment. And also, it's going to allow you to steal objectives off people. It's going to allow you to box people in and prevent their movement. It's going to allow you to do some really, really interesting stuff. So this one's 3 out of 3. This is the best stratagem in the detachment so far. We got one left though, Merciless Pursuit, which is at the end of your opponent's movement phase, one heretic status unit from your army that's not within engagement range. It's like one enemy unit that fell back this turn and is within 6 inches of your unit. Your unit can declare a charge as if it were your charge phase. When doing so, you can only select that enemy unit as the target of the charge, and if it's an eligible target, note that even if this charge is successful, your unit does not receive any charge bonus this turn. So this is absolutely bonkers. Basically what it's going to allow you to do is charge a unit in, tag a bunch of stuff, and then when they fall back, if they end that fallback move within 6 inches of you, you can then declare a charge against that unit as well. So that's really, really wild. This is going to make certain armies terrified to verse you, because if they're a shooting-based army and they don't have the combat to dig themselves out, you're basically going to be able to wrap around things. They fall back, you spend a CP, you wrap around them again, then they can't shoot you because you're in combat with them, so you blow them up in their turn, then it goes to your turn, you then charge them, wrap around them, and you can basically repeat this process over and over and make it really hard for your opponent. This is one of the best stratagems in the book. It's unfortunate that the detachment that it's attached to is very morale and battle shock dependent. If this was in any other detachment, it'd be insane. I am still going to give this a 3 out of 3 though, out of just raw power in the fact that this is going to make certain matchups absolutely hilarious. Alright, let's talk about some unit combos and which units pair best with the various stratagems that we've talked about, the enhancements that we've talked about. The first one I want to talk about is called Clingy Terminators, and basically it's a big unit of 10 Terminators, and what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put this in Deep Strike. It's going to rapid ingress in, and then it's going to charge your opponent, and when you make that charge move, you want to make sure that you're ending that charge move so that you're as close to other enemy units as well, not just the target of your charge. You're basically going to go in, charge something, end near everything else. Then when you fight, you kill the thing that you charged, and then you want to consolidate into as many different enemy models as possible. Obviously, be careful if your opponent's got massive melee damage, but generally speaking, the 10 Terminator brick is going to be able to take a decent punch. So you want to basically do this to tag as many models as possible, so that in your opponent's turn, when they go to fall back from your Terminators can then make a charge move in your opponent's movement phase, and basically that can keep those Terminators engaged in combat all game long, because they can't shoot the Terminators if they're within engagement range of something, and you can charge them in their own movement phase. So this is absolutely bonkers powerful, this Terminator unit, and obviously in combat matchups it's a very different story, because they're going to want to be in combat with you anyway, so charging them is not that big of a deal. However, there is one thing to note, and that is that if they go to fall back and then you charge them, it ticks over and it's in their turn, right? Which means you actually get to fight before their units that didn't declare a charge. So if they go to fall back and then you chase them down and you tag them, you get to fight first. So it's going to prevent a lot of really crazy damage. Alright, the next combo that we're going to talk about is Raptors, and how you're going to use the Screaming Descent ability to get a 3-inch deep strike on these guys, which is going to put -1 to your opponent's leadership tests. Then you're going to be able to put a further -1 because of the fearsome aura on the Raptors. So you're going to be able to put -2 on them and force them to take a battle shock test. And then you're basically going to be able to charge in with your Willbreaker Lord. You're going to be able to charge in. You're going to be able to do shooting into that unit. You're going to do all kinds of things by being able to do that 3-inch deep strike, inflict a battle shock test at -2 in your movement phase. It's going to open up a lot of options for you in your shooting and charge phases. And then the next obvious combo is the Jump Pack Lord with warp-fueled thrusters on his own with no unit attached. He's a really good piece that he can go up and down, he can go all over the place, he's really effective. And then if you have him and then 3 units of 5 Raptors, you've got a lot of objective play with the ability to 3-inch deep strike, with this guy's ability to go up and down, fast units, small units, deep striking units, rapid ingress options, a lot of really cool stuff you can do with the Warp Talons, the Raptors, and this Chaos Lord with the Warp Fueled Thrusters. Alright, with all of those combos covered, I'm going to give the Dread Talons a 6 out of 10, and a lot of those points go towards those Clingy Terminators. I think they're going to be one of those game-winning units that's absolutely brutal and flips certain matchups with great ease. So I really, really like this detachment based on those Terminators. So let's talk about a list that's going to maximize all of these different abilities and different combos that we've talked about so far. Alright, so here's the list. We've got a Chaos Lord in Terminator armor with the Will Breaker. He's our Warlord. We've got a Warp Fueled Thruster Jump Pack Lord. We've got our obligatory unit of 10 cultists. Every Chaos list should have it. It allows you to sticky your home objective and then move off and deal with the fight. We've then got 2 units of 5 Legionaries, and they're inside a Rhino. You're also going to be able to use that Rhino for those cultists as well if you need to. So there's a lot of utility there. Then we've got the big unit of 10 Terminators. This is where your Willbreaker Lord's going to go in, and they're going to be using that ability to charge your opponent in their movement phase. Really, really powerful. We've got 2 units of 10 Raptors and a single unit of 5. Then that's going to allow the unit of 5 is going to allow you to do a lot of objective play, while the big unit's going to be doing damage and inflicting those battle shock tests, and then capitalizing from those battle shock abilities. Then we have 3 units of Warp Talons. 3 units of 10. This is the theme of the detachment, and Warp Talons being one of the best units in the army is also really, really good. Being able to just go in, kill a bunch of things, then disappear with everything. Sure, when they come back, only one of them is going to be able to rapid ingress. The other 2 are going to have to go for deep strikes. But if they come in somewhere safe, even if they fail their 9-inch charge, you're still going to be able to, in your next turn, go in and charge. So you might sometimes deep strike them somewhere where they're safe, out of line of sight, out of charge range, knowing that they're not going to make a charge this turn, but in your next turn, they're positioned in such a way that with their 12-inch move, they can go in and kill things. And then our final points are spent on an allied unit of Nurglings. They're there because they can provide an egg 1 to hit aura. They can do secondaries. They can do, behind enemy lines. They can do a lot of different stuff. They're a cheap throwaway unit that's relatively inoffensive and inexpensive. So that's the list. Let's have a look at some deployment options. Alrighty guys, let's talk about deployment with this one. We've got an LGT map up here for this one today. Basically this whole green area, that's your opponent's deployment zone. This red area is yours. You're going to want to deploy your Rhino with your Legionaries inside of it behind a ruin like this here. Somewhere where it's positioned up towards the front, but it's outside of line of sight. Your opponent can't handle it, can't deal with it. And then basically you're going to put your Legionaries inside that and your 10 cultists behind it, but within 9 inches of it. So that in your first turn, your Legionaries can disembark out onto the objective, and your cultists can embark in the Rhino. And then that Rhino is free to move around here somewhere, so that in your next turn, you've got Legionaries that are on the objective, and you've got a Rhino that's moved around somewhere like here, and then cultists are able to disembark out of that Rhino onto that objective if you need to take it back from your opponent. So that's the first part, where the Rhino and the cultists go. The main one that you're going to want to master here, though, is what to do with your Warp Talons and your Raptors. So generally speaking, you're going to want to make sure that these guys can't be shot because they're very squishy. So you're going to want to put 1 unit of Warp Talons somewhere like this, where it's hidden behind this wall, and somewhere like this, where it's hidden behind this wall, but in positions where they're able to charge anything that touches these objectives, right? So that's really effective places for your Warp Talons. 1 unit here, 1 unit here, 3rd unit in Deep Strike, ready to rapid ingress if you need to. And then you're going to want to put your Terminators in Deep Strike for rapid ingress as well. And your Raptors are going to want to do something similar. You're going to want to probably put a unit of Raptors here and a unit of Raptors here. And that way, depending on what your opponent throws out onto the objective there, you can decide whether to respond with the Raptors or the Warp Talons. You're probably going to want to put a unit of 5 up in this one here. Because if you have Warp Talons hidden here, Warp Talons hidden here, maybe some Raptors in here, Cultists here, your opponent's not going to be able to do any damage to you in that first turn. And then if you get the first turn, what you do is you just send out 5 Raptors onto this objective and 5 Legionaries from the Rhino onto this objective. And then maybe 5 other Legionaries go up into this. They might not make it onto the objective, but they get staged up close. And now in your opponent's turn, they have to respond to those because otherwise you're going to get a 15 primary. So they're going to have to send something out to kill that, send something out to kill that, send something out to control this. And then you've still got your Warp Talons here, and you're able to respond hard to that threat. Or if they throw something soft out there, you're able to just go, cool, well, I'll just send in the Raptors this turn, and I'll keep the Warp Talons for another turn when you do have something hard. If they send out something big, you can go, cool, I'm going to rapid ingress my Terminators over here somewhere, charge them in, then Warp Talons charging in as well, and you're going to just absolutely eviscerate whatever you send on that objective. So being able to position your stuff in these ruins here and stay safe is the key. I think with this army, if you don't play it safe and if you play it too aggressively, you're going to die because it's too squishy. They're all just toughness 4 bodies. They die too easily. So I think having your units protected, prioritizing their safety, and only sending out units to respond if you have to, and making sure that you're using those 5-man units of legionaries, that 5-man unit of raptors, the rhino itself, and the cultists, to make sure that you're putting out units that force an overreaction from your opponent is going to be the key to getting utility out of this. And then making sure that when you do bring in those Terminators, you rapid ingress them somewhere into the center, and you basically want to use your Terminators to bully your opponent's army. So your Terminators rapid ingress here, they can't be shot, they charge whatever's in the center in your turn, then they tag a bunch of stuff, and as a result, your opponent has to fall back. When they fall back, you make a charge move and you chase them, and you basically keep pushing them back further and further into their own deployment zone, which is going to be a really, really effective way of slowing them down and stopping them from being able to contest these middle objectives, which is going to keep things like your Raptors and your Warp Talons alive for a lot longer than they otherwise would, because your opponent's busy trying to deal with these pain-in-the-ass Terminators that are tagging all of their lines. So it's a very complicated army to pilot, and I think it's one of those ones that, you know, if you're inexperienced or if you're a little bit too casual, you might end up struggling with this army. But in experienced hands, in somebody who's playing the game, you know, with some serious forethought and practice, I think this detachment has some legs, and I think it's really interesting. It's just a shame that it's beholden so much to morale and battle shock shenanigans. Alright, so with all of those things considered, where is the Dread Talons going to fit on our detachment leaderboard? I think it's going to fit right in here. Right in between the Fellhammer Siege Host and the Packbound Zealots. This is probably a solid C tier, slightly above the Fellhammer, but slightly below the Packbound Zealots. I think the fact that it's beholden to morale means that a lot of games it's going to get massive wins if your opponent does fail all those morale checks. But if your opponent passes all their morale checks, you're going to have a real hard time doing damage to them, and you don't have the durability to go toe-to-toe with somebody who's going to be dominating you like that. So I think it falls in that solid C tier area. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below, whether or not you disagree with my assessment here, and whether or not you guys think this is more powerful, what you think of the list, what you think of the overall concepts that I've discussed in this video. Thanks for tuning in as always. If you'd like to show your support, head over to blogforthebloodgod.com. You can pick up a shirt, you can pick up some apparel, we've got neoprene objective markers, we've got dice, we've got all kinds of battle mats and terrain, lots of really cool swag that you can get on that website that also goes a long way to supporting me and allowing me to continue producing content like this. So if you've enjoyed it, I implore you to check that out. You can also check out our Patreon, where we have an exclusive Discord community where we talk lists, we do one-on-one coaching, we have a lot of really cool conversations happening over there in the Discord as well. So whichever tickles your fancy, check it out. And as always, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your support, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers. Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice. Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice. Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice. Hi, I'm Dean Simbeck, President and CEO of Blog for the Blood God's exclusive high-quality dice warehouse and emporium. Due to a shipping error, I'm currently overstocked with Blog for the Blood God exclusive high-quality dice, and I'm passing the savings on to you! Roll 9-inch charges, pass invulnerable saves, roll high for damage, and score lots of hits. Check out the links in the description of this video to pick up your set today.